Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a truly monumental shift in how the U.S. military handles its tech infrastructure. We're talking about a massive new contract between the Department of Defense, Dell, and Microsoft. But look, this isn't just your standard software update. It's a total, ground-up restructuring of how the military actually buys and manages its most essential daily software. So we're going to break down exactly how this deal is wired, why the Pentagon felt it was absolutely necessary, and the strategic ripple effects it's creating across the whole defense industry. Right out of the gate, we've got to talk about the sheer scale of this thing, $9.7 billion. Now, it's absolutely crucial to understand what that number actually represents, right? Because this isn't some massive infusion of brand new taxpayer cash hitting the defense budget. No. Instead, what we're looking at here is a massive redirection. Basically, the Pentagon is taking existing IT budgets that used to be scattered all over the place across dozens of individual services and agencies, and they're pooling them into one single enterprise-wide buying arrangement. It's a highly aggressive consolidation of capital.
Now, if you dig into the actual procurement documents, you'll run into this formal title: Microsoft Department of War Enterprise Software Agreement to Core Enterprise Technology Agreement. Yeah, it's an exhausting alphabet soup, I know, but don't worry, we're not going to make you memorize that. Underneath all that heavy jargon, the reality is actually pretty simple. It's a 5-year guaranteed arrangement running from June 2026 all the way through May 2031. This contract completely locks in the framework for how the military will operate its core enterprise tech for half a decade. But while Microsoft's name is front and center in the title, the actual mechanics of the deal reveal a really fascinating twist.
Now, what's really interesting about this setup is the mechanical oddity of it all. Think about it. The software being deployed here is overwhelmingly built by Microsoft, and yet the $9.7 billion contract, it wasn't actually awarded directly to Microsoft. It was awarded to Dell Federal Systems. On paper, this contract is strictly between the Pentagon and Dell's government-focused unit. So you might be wondering, why is a massive hardware and infrastructure company stepping in to be the prime contractor for Microsoft's software suite? Well, let's break down exactly how that structure works.
Okay, so here's how this relationship actually functions in practice. You've got the Pentagon acting as the ultimate buyer, and Microsoft supplying the underlying software. But sitting right there in the middle, acting as this crucial bridge, is Dell Federal Systems. They're playing the role of what's called a managed services prime. So Dell isn't just acting as some simple reseller here, not at all. The Pentagon is paying Dell to handle all the complex integration, the ongoing support framework, and the centralized administration for all of these licenses. Basically, Dell manages the headache, right? And Microsoft sits in the background, collecting the underlying software license revenue at their negotiated rates.
Under this unified framework, Dell's on the hook for supplying and integrating a really comprehensive suite of Microsoft tools. We're talking Microsoft 365 subscriptions, highly advanced cloud capabilities, and your traditional on-premises licensing too. Make no mistake, this is a massive win for Dell's federal business. And they didn't just walk right into this either. They had to beat out some really heavy-hitting competitors, companies like CDW, Insight, and Carahsoft, just to secure this managed services role. By pulling off that win, Dell has essentially guaranteed itself a highly lucrative, rock-solid revenue stream for the next 5 years.
And the scope of this deployment? It is truly enterprise-wide, the whole shebang. It covers everything from the Air Force and Army to the brand new Space Force and the Coast Guard. They're all going to be drawing on this exact same contract. But honestly, the most crucial addition here, the intelligence agencies. Look, in the commercial sector, Microsoft's dominance is pretty much unquestioned. But historically, their footprint within the intelligence community has been, well, a bit less established. This single framework changes that. It guarantees Microsoft a foundational presence deep inside the Pentagon's and the intelligence community's most critical software stacks for 5 years straight.
So the crucial point is understanding the massive problem the Pentagon was desperately trying to solve here. For the past decade, individual branches and agencies were essentially acting as their own independent buyers. It was like a giant, disorganized puzzle. The Navy would negotiate one contract, right? Then the Army would go out and negotiate a totally different one. The result was this chaotic patchwork of separately negotiated, completely duplicative agreements. Without any kind of centralized procurement, the overall spending on software licenses had quietly but massively ballooned way out of control. And this brilliantly illustrates a much broader strategic shift happening inside the Department of Defense right now. We're firmly moving away from that 2010s era of fragmented, scattered, smaller IT agreements. As we look forward to 2026 and beyond, the defense sector is tilting heavily towards single, enterprise-wide vendor frameworks. We're seeing this pattern pop up everywhere.
I mean, just recently, the Space Force awarded SpaceX a massive $2.29 billion framework to build a data network on Starshield satellites. The era of the mega deal is officially upon us, driven by this intense desire to streamline strategic vendor relationships.
But if you want the formal, stated justification for this specific Dell-Microsoft mega deal, it really comes down to one single number: $422 million. That's the projected amount of taxpayer money the Pentagon says it's going to save every single year. And how? Simply by enforcing some strict cost discipline and eliminating all those overlapping duplicative licenses we just talked about. When you multiply that out over the 5-year lifespan of the contract, you're looking at over $2 billion in savings. $2 billion. That right there is the operational logic behind handing the reins to a single prime contractor like Dell.
Now, let's move to the political layer and see how this builds into the broader story. Because whenever a contract nearing $10 billion is awarded, let's be real, it doesn't happen in a vacuum. Market watchers naturally pay incredibly close attention to the political environment surrounding it. In the lead up to this award, defense coverage surfaced a few notable observations regarding the political optics surrounding the deal.
Specifically, analysts who track defense procurement noted a few completely neutral realities leading up to the announcement. First, Dell's chief executive, Michael Dell, had been visibly close to the Trump administration over the preceding year. Second, automated stock trackers that follow Nancy Pelosi's financial disclosures had actually flagged Dell as a likely beneficiary of federal procurement, and this was several weeks before the contract was officially awarded. And finally, when the news broke on a Wednesday, Dell's shares predictably jumped. Again, these are simply the objective data points that the market was closely watching.
Naturally, all of this raises a pretty big question in the press. Did political positioning materially advance Dell's bid over its competitors? Well, to be absolutely clear here, Dell firmly denies that politics played any role whatsoever in securing this contract. And realistically, the official procurement record itself just can't fully answer that question either way. What we do know for absolute certain is that Dell won a highly competitive bidding process against some extremely capable firms to secure this incredibly valuable managed services role.
Which brings us to the ultimate takeaway for this explainer. The cost discipline argument for this $9.7 billion deal makes perfect logical sense. The savings, they are undeniable. But as the Pentagon continues to aggressively embrace these massive consolidated mega deals with single vendors, whether it's Dell and Microsoft for software or SpaceX for satellites, we really have to ask ourselves a tougher question. Are these unified frameworks actually the safest and most resilient future for military IT, or are they simply just the most efficient? Putting all of your digital eggs into one strategic vendor's basket is a seriously bold move. And whether that approach guarantees true security or just better savings is something the entire defense world is going to be watching incredibly closely for the next 5 years. Thanks so much for joining us for this explainer.